Welcome to the Mind Money Spectrum podcast, where your hosts, Aaron Ogti and Trishul Patel, go beyond traditional finance questions to help you explore how to use your money to achieve the freedom you want in life.
Hi, my name is Aaron Ogti. I'm a financial advisor in the Bay Area, and I'm here with Trishul Patel, a wealth manager on the East Coast.
Hey, Aaron, great to be here today, and thanks everybody for listening.
Great to be here as well. So, over the last couple of months, I have not been feeling the greatest. My daughter's softball teams have started their summer tournament season, and I genuinely love coaching them. And I've had to pull back a little bit of only coaching one at a time because in past years I've tried coaching two teams at the same time at two different levels, and I acknowledge, okay, that was just a little bit too much. But recently, so I think I've mentioned in the past, I had a knee injury. I had to have a knee surgery to help clean up my meniscus. I have not enjoyed being the PTA treasurer, and just kind of like a lot of time commitments. I just haven't been feeling as great, most because I like that I joined up for too many things, and I'm not living up to the things that I joined up for. So gonna move on from the PTA. I still love the coaching, so I like genuinely love it. Not gonna give that part up. And today in particular, I was like, again, having that feeling like it was fine, but this morning, as I was kind of sitting down drinking my coffee, I was having this feeling, and as I was talking to Trish before record, I kind of realized that a little bit of the factor today was kind of the news related and nothing specific, although it's a little bit of markets being down, it's a little bit of the shooting in Uvalde, Texas, it's a little bit of those things. But I have noticed over the last 2 years, pretty much since the pandemic, since March of 2020, that I have spent too much time kind of doom scrolling. I've spent too much time just on Twitter, just sitting. And while I like Twitter and able to interact with other advisors, and I really get a lot of good kind of like Chargers, Padres, UCLA softball news that I like to follow. Uh, I like interacting with other advisors and some kind of really good thoughts and on how to help clients, how to be a better advisor, different strategies that I may not have considered, different approaches, try and make things a little more simple. So I like the interactions and most of the stuff I get from Twitter. Facebook, I've been phasing out a little bit more over the last couple of years. I just haven't been participating as much, but I still have these negative feelings, like as I'm getting doom scrolling through Twitter. And so Trishul made a quick comment that's like that. You know what? That's what we're going to kind of talk about today. But my goal for today is kind of addressing this issue, but then trying to get to something positive and funny, just to make myself smile a little bit more, something like that. Because Trishul actually does a pretty good job with that in general. So, Trisha, you had mentioned a different phrase that you had read about. It wasn't doom scroll. What was the phrase that you had heard?
Yeah, I mean, I had separately come to light to this notion over the past few weeks or months, and the terminology I heard is rage scrolling, but it's very similar concept. Basically, it's the same thing.
And so so one, like, when did you either hear about this, notice about this, and like, uh, what is your interaction with, but also not just the action of doing it yourself, but it's all like some of the introspection, but also other things that you've read about this feeling.
Right. Yeah. So over the last few months, I remember hearing the term, and then I just started thinking about it in the context of my own life, and I kind of realized, hey, that this is kind of what's driving my my social media interactions as well. And it's interesting because it seems like a lot of the social media outlets are slowly, or not even slowly, they just kind of migrated towards this level of content where everything is kind of broken down into little sound bites designed to elicit a very quick emotion. And it seems like most of that emotion is something that would elicit a feeling of doom or rage, or I've mentioned before, the primary underlying human emotion is angst, this uncomfortable feeling. And we're just so addicted to it that it's powerful enough to keep us wanting more and more, even though these aren't happy feelings. And it works, right? Because you feel, you read this headline, you're like, oh, that can't be great, that's horrible, and they're like, okay, let me find the next one. And you just keep doing this, and you're kind of filling your mind with all these thoughts that over time it just doesn't seem healthy. And it's interesting because it's underlying, but it seems quite pervasive. And it actually reminded me of something I've looked into more academically many years ago, when I first got into looking for market patterns in algorithms. I started designing my own machine learning algorithms. This was like maybe late 2000, like 2008, 2009 ish.
Okay.
And there was research that started looking at trends in macro level search data and correlating that with the markets. And I started running my own patterns, like looking at the Twitter data, the Twitter
Okay.
data that you, right? So the analysis I ran is I downloaded the entire Twitter database at that time. And it's interesting because that entire database could fit on one hard drive at that time, and now it's probably like a hard drive a minute. That's
Yeah.
how. But I didn't have the horsepower to scroll through every single word, so I deleted all the words and I kept the emoticons.
Okay.
And I categorized each emoticon with an emotion, happy, sad, angry, angst, and so on. And I started looking for patterns with, the trends of these emoticons across days, and seeing if there was a correlation with that and the movement of the stock markets, right? So you throw all this data into like a machine learning thing, and you say, what do you predict is going to happen based upon what's happened in the past, given this pattern of emoticon data for the following day in the market? And, that was the models that I was trying to create. And it was the emoticons, the emotions that had the highest predictive power, according to the model, were the ones that were more fear and doom related.
Yeah.
And they showed sensitivity to falling markets. And it's something I kind of left in the back of my mind, for a long time since then. It's not something I've looked at now that I've moved away from quantitative investing and stuff like that. But it did remind me of that notion that, that there's these larger macro trends that are manifesting, and you can probably tell or feel that maybe the general mood has been a little bit more angsty. Maybe, we do have a lot of stuff going on right now, like the wars and, the Ukraine situation, and then there's a lot of fatigue from the coronavirus and stuff like that, and inflation and so on. But I think in general, it's come down to a science with the way the social media engines are being populated to really key into that, and kind of push our own individual buttons to kind of keep us addicted to these resources.
So I don't want to go deep right now, but I do want to kind of like, quick aside, like kind of chuckling at just the idea that the analyst at the hedge fund has this theory about like Twitter data and market time. Like, sure, that makes sense. But using all the words is too hard. So only go with the emoticons. And like, I'm sure that while you might have been the only one to do that specific, how do like emoticons relate to market movements, when people think about like the super high level analysts at these genius firms, and this is why the hedge funds would make a lot of money, they charge really high fees, have high minimums, and the billionaires go them, and everyone's just kind of making it up as they go along. I'm
Yeah.
imagining you like uh you have a successful strategy, and a billionaire walks into your office like, hey, we're thinking about investing $100 million with you. What was the basis behind your success last year? And it's like, oh, I did this analysis of Twitter emoticons. Really, you put all the Twitter data and you're able to parse it like based on markers. Yeah, but not all the data because the words was too hard. It was just the emoticons. Like, sold. It's like that level of analysis, I'm sure happens all the time.
Yeah, I would think so. There's just some research is actually really hard to do, and it's really hard to do very, very well. So this was actually what I was doing after graduating, before I got my first full-time job, and this was actually my pitch to get my foot in the door, to interviews with like hedge funds and stuff like that. And the notion is, I took an academic model and I just kind of expanded on it, and I said, here's what could be done, and if you hire me, we can do a lot more.
Yeah.
What was the pitch?
Yeah. I do like that. That was a good chuckle. But getting back to the kind of social media thing, one of the things that I think about, I don't know if it's good or bad, but I find myself just a little happier when I'm uninformed. And I don't like the idea of being uninformed, if that makes sense. Like I don't like the concept ignorance is bliss. I don't like head in the sand kind of thing. And so I have these conflicting thoughts of, okay, I want to make sure I stay informed, but I also know that the news is designed to sensationalize because that's how they get viewers and how they get clicks and how they get people coming back. And I think about that like every now and then, like, hey, did you hear about this thing? Like, no. It's like I don't even feel bad about that part of something happened. It's usually from kind of friends or family members who have a uh, vague idea of what I do, and like, hey, did you see the stock market drop today? No, I didn't know that. I was talking to clients and helping them save cash for this other thing that had nothing to do with the stock market. I was like, you don't pay attention to the stock market? Most days I don't. And it's like the, that kind of feeling of, how do you find that balance between staying informed enough? Like I guess I like the concept of being an informed voter, if that makes sense. Like I want to make sure I know enough about issues, especially being in California with the proposition system. You kind of have to be, because there's a lot of California laws that don't, it's like it's harder to pass through the state legislature, and it's easier to put it on the ballot. And I think you only need a 50 plus 1% vote for it to pass and become a state law. I don't know enough about it, but this has been a problem with California law for a long time. And so there's a lot of propositions on every ballot that have actual like impact on day-to-day life and other things. But it's like California voters are supposed to be well informed on the three strikes law and where it went too far, and they have to be informed on public transportation and infrastructure costs. And it's like I now I feel like I wonder how much of that feeds into this. Like I shouldn't have to be an expert on policing and public policy and infrastructure and environmental decisions and kind of like business trade-offs versus environmental protections of a local marshland. And but there most time I feel like I have to be, so I have to stay informed, which leads to more of those feelings. I don't know, it's like, do you ever have that like that? What are your thoughts on that concept, ignorance is bliss? Do you ever like wish you could be doing that? Do you ever find yourself intentionally avoiding news, or can you find some better balance of staying informed without doom scrolling?
Right. Yeah. I think it's certainly been an evolution on my end. I think, growing up, I was quite tuned into, just television, frankly. It was something that was always on in the background, and the news was, somewhere there. But I never really paid attention. This is like elementary school, high school.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly enough, when I went to university, no TV. So instantly just kind of cut off from the world. You're in a little bubble and you only see 20-year-olds and then, the professor in the front of the class, but, you're asleep, so you don't really see him. But so you don't really interact with, that much outside of your bubble. And this is the early 2000s where there was internet, but there wasn't really internet, that there
Yeah.
was social media, but there wasn't really social media. Maybe there were a few, memes, but not really, right?
Yeah.
So,
It was you had like AOL message boards.
right, you had the chat rooms, right? That
Yeah.
that was your
Yeah.
social media.
Yeah.
So I think it was a bit different because we actually used to chat, right? You used to actually have conversations with everybody in the dorm,
Yeah.
but it wasn't really sending articles or news or anything like that. You were playing video games or whatever. You were talking about assignments and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think it was different. I think you could be in a bubble, and I even um, recall major events going on, and you might not find out about them for quite some time. So I think it was easier back then, frankly, and I kind of did hold on to that for most of the 2000s. And even when I had my first job out of my master's program, I was in a financial services firm building software for banks, so we didn't really need to know what was going on with the rest of the world.
Yeah.
So after graduating, I chose not to have a television, and it was still kind of in that bubble of not really needing to have the pulse on
Mm-hmm.
everything. And at the same time, I did get into investing, but then I was looking into companies. So you don't really need that big macro perspective so much, a little bit, but not so much. But, I think things started to change when I moved into professional investing and professional investment management and, options pricing and stuff like that. At that point, I'm looking at global markets around the world across commodities, currencies, and stocks and indices. And, so we're looking at everything. And you kind of need to have some idea or some notion of all these things. And then it's just information overload, like literally the whole planet. And you got to have some idea of why that thing blew up and why, this thing is about to go off the rails and so on. And it was in that period where, I really started to keep tabs on a lot of things beyond my bubble. I think, my curiosity or my interest expanded beyond my more individual interests into more like social interests, maybe political and socioeconomic. And I think that also kind of pulled me into a different sphere because, I'd say in the 2000s, it was more formative, meaning I learned about things through fiction, and like classic literature, stuff like that, like looking back instead of looking present or looking forward. And I found that to be quite insightful on, driving my interests and my motives and my understanding of just how people are and how societies are. But yeah, it's different when your career is so tied to what's going on in the markets. But what did evolve, I think, once I really got attuned to what's going on in the markets, is I started to create better filters on what's really important. And what I started to realize is there's so much noise out there that you could really titrate things down. When I transitioned to the hedge fund, again, you're supposed to know absolutely anything and everything that's going on. Especially in the space I was in, my niche was volatility, and volatility is angst and nervousness, and that everything's correlated with that apparently. So, not only from the clients who want to make sure that you understand everything, but also our models were impacted by it. But again, what ended up happening is just creating filters and creating a way to titrate all of that, the massive amounts of information, into something that's manageable. So the way I did it is I ended up getting a few key sources that, were the most informative and the least prone to, having exaggerated emotional content, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just get the bullet points. And once a day was enough for me in the morning, 5 minutes, just digest the information and then get any major alerts throughout the day. We had an alert system set up through like the Bloomberg terminals, and that ended up doing most of it from that perspective. But what I also started to learn over time is, again, there's just so much noise out there that if you don't need that day-to-day pulse, like my main strategies today are passive, really you can tune out even an order of magnitude more than what I allowed in at the hedge fund, right? And from that perspective, for as an example, you look at the S&P today and you look at it 1 month ago, it's basically the same. So over the entire month, there could have been tons of zigzagging up, down, left, and right. But if you just looked at one number between, 1 month ago until today, that's all you would have to do to realize that the state of the financial planet has barely changed in a month.
I I do a pretty good job for markets specifically. I tend to look at the S&P 500 1-year trailing. I can usually do a pretty good job of telling everyone, like, until it's down over a trailing 12 months, like, I'm not paying attention. And so that actually happened. Like, we actually did get negative over a trailing 12 months. And like, okay, I'll pay attention. It's like, that's like a little bit. But like, that's one of the things, like, that. So I'm thinking, like, that concept of like curation. I think that's part of the reason why market downturns don't phase me, is things like year to date almost mean nothing to me. I almost feel like, because I've done enough like extrapolating returns that happen over 2 or 3 months to like an annualized number. Because I remember there are a few times I was trying to help clients interpret their statements when, like, they had one account that was older, and so we had, say, 10 years of history, but they opened a new account, we only had like 6 months of history, and so like their performance numbers looked different, and I was trying to help them kind of interpret that. And then you see, like, okay, this was up 2% in a month. It's like, well, annualized, that's like a 24% rate of return. That's like this not realistic. It's like yes, it happens once or twice a decade, maybe, but that 2% in a month means nothing, and down 2% a month also means nothing. And like trying to explain that to clients, and so sometimes you get, actually one of my favorite ones is looking at baseball stats for like the first week or the first game of an NFL season. And it's like the guys who had a great game, like, oh my gosh, they're on track to break the record 5 times over. And it's like those short sample sizes, if you try to do any kind of extrapolation, they're just ridiculous numbers. It'd be like the current record, I think, for passing touchdowns is like 55, I think, in the NFL. And so if a guy has 4 touchdowns, or I think 5 touchdowns his first game, it's like, oh my gosh, he's on track for 120 touchdowns. And it's like, just you like, as soon as you say that, you're like, yeah, there's a reason why people can't maintain that pace. And the same idea applies to the stock market. It's like, oh my gosh, it's down 30% year to date. That's going to extrapolate out to a negative 200 or something like that, depending on like what time frame you look at. And although you can't really have negative 2, it'd be like a negative 90 or something like that. I don't know how you'd extrapolate those percentages. I guess year to date you have negative 200. Wait, could you go negative more than 100? What should I think? No, you can't go negative more than 100. Yeah.
So you would use geometric returns, and it would
yeah. And so that idea of curation, of like training yourself to filter out noise, is really good. Because I remember sometime last fall, my computer shut down. I had to reboot the operating system. Everything I have is pretty much saved in OneDrive on the cloud or Google Drive, so I didn't really lose anything. I have a bookend, so I wasn't worried about losing data. The only thing I did lose was the QuickBooks. I used that for the PTA treasurer, and that was backed up on my hard drive, and so I lost like 4 months worth of work. I think that's probably one of the factors of contributing to me being a bad, slow, behind treasurer and not enjoying it. But like, I don't like blaming my computer for that. So that's the only thing I lost. But when I reset my computer, I had to do all of my browser bookmarks. Again, I have all my passwords in a password manager, so like didn't lose anything. I knew I could find it, get back to everything. But all of the cookies were lost, or like all the sites, like my search history, like the browser didn't remember that. So some of the things that I would go to easily, like it had to like just resell and stuff. I didn't put Facebook or Twitter in my bookmarks on my browser when I reset that. And I've noticed that has had a significant impact in me going to Facebook or Twitter on my computer. I still do it sometimes, but I have to like manually type it in. But that's helped. Like, and it's not necessarily curating what I follow on those things. I noticed on my phone, I moved the Facebook icon to like the 3rd or 4th screen instead of the 1st or 2nd. It's also helped me not go to Facebook as much. I still think I have Twitter on my 2nd screen, but the other thing I was thinking about, and one of the things that does make me angry about those companies, but it's like exactly what they're trying to do. When you mentioned that doom scrolling idea of like they have figured out how to get you hooked and just keep staying on that app. I have noticed, and I've noticed recently, in the last few months, but it's probably been happening for a while that I haven't truly noticed. There are more things on my feed that I did not opt into. That it's not by a person that I want to follow. And it's like, it's under the, like, you might like this based on other things that you have expressed interest in or watched. And they're trying to provide some predictive thing. And so as I'm seeing more things that I didn't sign up for, I think I think, again, Twitter and Facebook are trying to like manipulate that curation. Like I'm
Right.
trying to filter things out, and they're trying to get through my filter.
So it's not necessarily you might like this, but Twitter has come to understand that this is statistically more likely to keep you hooked onto Twitter, regardless of how it makes you feel emotionally.
Oh yeah, that doesn't surprise me. But it's also like I'm sure it was subtle. I'm sure that's why by the time I notice it, it's probably been going on for a while.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's interesting because it wasn't maliciously programmed in, but you can just imagine you feed in these articles into, like a neural network or something and say, let's figure out what humans like the most. It's going to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
And that's what it's going to serve up.
Well, so I guess the difference is I think about like Netflix, where based on what I watch, they provide pretty good recommendations for a movie that I would enjoy. I feel like that's the example of this working the way it's intended. They have done a great job of, based on the things I have liked and watched, of recommending things that I like to watch.
You know what it might be? I think when you choose to watch something, it's a more conscious decision, whereas rage scrolling is more passive.
Yeah,
So
go on.
you're just scrolling basically, right? And the emotional hits to your amygdala are just kind of getting ding ding ding, right? You're not even clicking.
Oh, that's
Whereas,
interesting.
yeah, to choose a show to watch, you're actually saying, "Hey, look at that! Let me check the trailer. I know that director. Yeah, this is a good one," and so on, right?
Super side note,
Yeah.
loved Free Guy with Ryan Reynolds. I forgot the director's name, but like I remember I wrote it down somewhere. Then I saw that the Adam Project is also Ryan Reynolds and the same director. Love the Adam Project. Like
Right.
it was, here's a formula that works. I'm in. Sorry. Well, yeah, it's yeah. I think you're right. Like something about that. Netflix makes a recommendation, but I get to opt into it, and I can't opt out. I can't opt in to the like this. I don't know how to phrase it. I was like, yeah, like I'm moving from one person I follow to another person I follow, and they insert someone I don't follow, and I can't have any way to not see that. I can't
Yeah.
choose to not see it. I might be able to opt out, but I have to acknowledge the thing first before I can opt out.
Sure. Well, okay. So one way I've tried to kind of combat this is, so I've never really used, Facebook too much. I sometimes take a hiatus for like a year or so at a time. I tried for the business. It didn't quite work out well. This business, I didn't quite work out too well. I've probably missed the boat with that and with Twitter. But I was, or I have been big on Reddit since kind of the beginning. And um, I what I did notice though is, so with Reddit, it's just like Facebook, but it's not meant for connecting you with people. It's meant to connect you with different idea groups, and these are called subreddits, right? Each
Mm-hmm.
idea group talks about a specific topic, like tables and shoes and tomatoes, right? But you get to pick those topics, and
Yeah.
I think that's probably helped insulate me a bit, but I did have a few topics in there that I've noticed have led to that notion of rage scrolling. Like a few of the ones that were a little unexpected, but I probably should have seen it coming, or like world news, right? Duh.
Yeah.
um, U.S. news, politics, stuff like that. And I wanted to be informed on politics, which is why I had it in there. But what I ended up doing recently, once I realized how it was monopolizing my headspace, is I've actually unsubscribed to those. And it even led me to the notion, should I only just subscribe to these subreddits that are happy emotions, even though I'll be less informed? I really had that internal debate, before we even started thinking about this conversation, and it might be a notion to consider. That's where I kind of landed, and what I might need to think about is really opting out of those and just going back to, if I want, my outside news, having it in that, 2 to 5 minute bubble where it's curated for me, and that's kind of it for the day.
So, are you still kind of having that internal debate, or have you come to a conclusion for yourself?
I think I've culled mostly everything. The only thing I left in there that's probably prone to rage scrolling is world news. That's the only subreddit. So the others, just for reference, are Ask Science, a few fire groups, cooking, stuff like that, life hacks, okay. Nintendo Switch, that was a good one. I like that. Science, technology, space, stuff like that. So yeah, I still have a bit. So I think I've come some ways, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, so do you? So again, I also have that internal debate. Do you think that contributes to like the echo chamber effect that's kind of making society more polarized?
The rage scrolling?
No, the only following things that you like and make you happy.
Well, okay, so I think both have that issue, right? Right? So the rage scrolling, for sure, right? Because it is designed to send you information that elicits a response, and mostly it's stuff that is filled with confirmation bias, right?
Yes.
And on this other hand, well, so it's hard to say because this is stuff I enjoy, right? Space, technology, Nintendo, science. And I feel like I still want that source, to be informed, and I'm getting it through, bullet points rather than articles that are designed to elicit, emotional responses. So, I think it could work for me, but I think it may depend on individual implementation for sure.
So, there is one person I follow on Twitter. I saw him speak at a conference, and I was really impressed. And again, because he's a speaker at a conference and he has an hour, like there's enough kind of nuanced conversation that there are some things that I was able to kind of respectfully disagree on, and other things that he was very convincing. And I'm really glad I got to see him speak. And so I've been following him on Twitter, and best way to summarize it is I'm sure he voted for Trump. He's an economist. He's a smart guy. I kind of trust his general process. He was very much against an economic shutdown at the beginning of COVID, and kind of saying that basically it just wouldn't work. It wouldn't be able to stop the virus in the way we thought it would, and the economic impact would be kind of greater than the public health risks. And he was more or less kind of reasonable with his arguments, but there are also other times where he'll say something and it's Twitter, and I'll flat out disagree, and it actually kind of makes me angry. And I have one like, should I stop following him? And then then everyone on my Twitter feed will be someone I agree with already. And it's like, is that almost like it's almost like am I being like a an intellectual coward. Like that's kind of like the phrase I think about. It's like I don't want to have to deal with opposing viewpoints, even though like every rational part of me says like I should be open to other opinions, and I acknowledge that I could be wrong. And if you kind of don't even let other opinions in, it's too easy to go down that path of I'm always right. And like it's harder to maintain that skepticism, even internally. And so like I wonder like is it healthier to follow this guy or not?
Yeah, that's a tough one, um, because I get the, the valor in trying to do something like that. However, are we holding ourselves to too high a bar? Like, the notion is we do have the ability, if we want to engage in, um, complex and divisive ideas and notions with. But do we have to do it so often? I guess that does it have to be part of our everyday existence?
That's a great point. That might
Like,
have convinced me to stop following him.
yeah, and I'm kind of convincing myself as well that it's kind of okay to disconnect a bit. For example, even on the other side, I remember growing up, I was really disappointed with network news because it just wasn't good, in my opinion. Like
Yeah.
they'd have 10 or 15 words on a topic, they never asked tough questions, and then they jump to the next thing. And so, I just stopped watching it. And then I tuned into like PBS NewsHour, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But then I realized, I could just probably get a few bullet points here and there. And then came like the Daily Show, right?
Yeah.
With Jon Stewart. This was like, in his heyday in like the 2000s. Except I noticed a similar thing where it was just kind of making me upset hearing all these things. The theme of the show was just showing all the things that are kind of wrong with like politics and
Yeah.
the government and the economy and capitalism and stuff like that. It was pretty left leaning, but the main point was there were stuff I kind of agreed with, but it just wasn't making me happy. And if we recall, Jon Stewart kind of quit for those same reasons. He was just tired of being angry all the time. He
Yeah.
just didn't want it to dominate his life. That feeling of being upset. So, I think we can understand and empathize with all of these tough issues, but it doesn't have to be such a large part of our lives.
My wife and I have kind of fallen off from watching Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, kind of for the exact same reason.
Yeah.
It was entertaining. We loved it. We really liked his take, and he did the research. He some of his stories were just hilarious and ridiculous, and it was kind of it helped made us feel better. But enough of the stories were just making us depressed and angry, and we kind of we haven't I think we haven't stopped recording. It's still like there, but it's been a while since we kind of like, hey, we should go watch that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So what are some things that you do to kind of make sure that you're happy? We've probably talked about some of these in the past, but like just kind of a reminder.
I think the balance that I've transitioned to is what kind of keeps me afloat. And it's really more the simple things, like the routine I keep throughout my day. I try to, when we started the pandemic, if we recall the very early episodes, I was very out of shape, right?
Yeah, you picked up
And
running.
I picked up running, and at some point I just transitioned to, okay, I'm gonna, concentrate on health and make that a part of my day-to-day living. And that actually does change a lot, because at this point I do try to work out every day and do some sort of outside activity every day, whether it's going for a walk or cycle or something. And it involves also changing up the nutrition, which also changes up habits that encompass the day, like eating solid breakfast, lunch, dinner, and so on. And you throw that in with a couple, your work day and quality time with the family, you have a pretty full life, right? And then
Yeah.
things on the weekend. So, it's more back to the simpler things. And we talked about this not too long ago, just like hobbies that we have kind of thrown in, going to like movies more often and picking up little activities to do on my own, building stuff with my hands and crafts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think these are all just very simple things that are helping me to stay in balance.
I think that idea of the routine is really, really important. Um, I still play uh, board games with some friends, and actually my dad now plays with us. So we do this once a week after kids go to bed. We play Catan online. We have a Zoom meeting set up, and so I see 3 friends and my dad once a week. Um, I I think part of this I really love coaching my daughter's softball teams, and at those practices, I nothing else enters my head. Like that idea of like flow, when like that some engineers have described, um, when they're like coding with no distractions. Uh, th- that that's kind of when I'm in that groove. Like I am not worried about anything else. Nothing else enters my brain, and I really do like that. And then practice ends, like I gotta clean up, gotta make sure we get home on time, gotta get my daughter home. She has homework, she has to take a shower, she can get ready for bed. Like all that stuff comes back. But for those couple hours, um, I'm feeling good.
Yeah.
Do you ever get like is there any do you have anything you do that has that kind of that flow feeling?
I think I do kind of feel that way when I'm working out now.
Okay.
So, what I it's interesting the way I've approached the exercise. For example, when we're working with our clients, the biggest thing that'll contribute to their success is if they're engaged, right? If they're all in and they do the things that we want them to do, right?
Yeah.
It's just like picking up a new exercise routine, the commitment to it.
Yeah.
So we all realize that the trainer, he's done those things, and if we follow what he says, we can achieve those results, and that's what we try to tell our clients. So I have a trainer who I meet with 5 to 6 days a week, and my commitment, what I've told myself is, I'm just going to do what he says for that 1 hour, right? Just whatever he says to do, I'll do it, right? Just like what I want what I would have wanted my ideal client to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's interesting because my mind doesn't question it now. He's whatever he says, I trust that he's gonna not push it too hard, but definitely he does push me enough to make it quite challenging. And while I'm doing that, I am kind of just in my zone where I'm not thinking about all the other things. I'm just doing what he tells me to do, and that's all I have to worry about for that 1 hour.
That's interesting. So, because I have described sometimes to not always clients or prospects, but uh, like other people, kind of what is my work like on a day-to-day basis. It's like if I'm not picking stocks, what are you doing? It's like, well, sometimes it's like a third uh, accountant, it's a third personal trainer, and it's a third therapist. Um, and I think that's closer to being a financial planner, where yeah, sometimes we got to do some math. You need to save this much, get this rate of return. There's some taxes that we're going to save. Sometimes just like, okay, uh, how do we get you to develop the habits to uh, like make sure that you're on track? Are you make sure you're saving enough, not spending too much, but kind of developing good habits? And again, I think there's when you talk about that physical training, like sometimes just most of my clients could figure these things out by themselves, but just like they come to us like I want someone else to figure it out for me. I had never thought of it because I've never worked with a personal trainer myself. Um, I've always been kind of athletic enough and like I here are the things I like to do. I don't need to pay someone to do that. But I had never considered from that idea of I don't have to think about what I need to do. I get to like outsource my thinking.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really interesting perspective.
Yeah, it's outsourcing the thinking, the second guessing, the do I have it in me, all that. It just kind of quiet that voice and just do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you definitely convinced me to unfollow that guy on Twitter. It, you, you might have me on the path of hiring a personal trainer. Although I say, you know what, I can't answer that right now because I'm still recovering from my knee surgery. So it's like I can't do any of those exercises. And um, getting on the Stairmaster and watching Silicon Valley, like that was a really good incentive.
Right.
I was able to do that pretty much every weekday from beginning of the year until I hurt my knee.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So, and that was about 2 months ago, 3 months ago,
Mm-hmm.
something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so it's like I think it's like going one person out. If I can find that groove, that habit, that I may not be able to do the Stairmaster anymore, but I'll figure out the next thing and figure out my incentive.
Mm.
So, what else makes you happy?
So we started doing some camping. That's a little different.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we tried our first backyard venture. You put the tent in the backyard and see if you can survive the night. We did that a few weeks ago.
Nice.
So we survived. We learned a lot, and a good thing we tried it 10 feet away, where you can run inside and get the batteries or the flashlight or the fan, right?
Oh,
And what we also realized is so that the fall for Memorial Day we went to a state park here in Florida,
yeah.
Canashoa, and we tried that out for the weekend. And we realized it's actually not so bad either because apparently most places where you go tent camping, they have facilities, right? You're not in the middle of the
Yeah.
woods, and the campsites have like electricity and stuff like that, so you can plug in whatever you need. Like we bought a whole, a big room size fan, and we're like, okay, this isn't actually so bad. So, the next venture is we're gonna get an RV, hitch it to the car, and start driving up the East Coast
Okay.
next month, and we'll see how that goes. But yeah, just something a little different. Try to be outdoors a bit more for the summer, and see what else we can uncover with our interest there.
Uh, coming up, so for March Madness, I went to go see my brother on the East Coast, and we just hanging out watching sports all day, Thursday, Friday. Played around of golf, but we had such a great time. So now my family's going to go out there, and my sister's family's going to go out there as well. So there's going to be me, my brother, and sister, and all of our family. So there's 11 of us total at his place for 4th of July. So we're really looking forward to that. So it's going to be my kids' first cross country flight. Like they made flights down to San Diego that like you're only in the air for like 45 minutes. So this is going to be one of those like long flights, but it's going to be a great trip. We're going to go do some stuff in DC as well.
Nice. Yeah. I think it seems like recreation and travel is almost back to where it used to be.
Yeah. The other thing I pulled up a note, like I was thinking about sort of like the one of the good sides of the doom scrolling idea. Like I found the videos People Are Awesome, I think. I got the name wrong, but that's just like people, human beings doing just really incredible, amazing things. And there were times where like I could watch that for 10 minutes and I genuinely loved it. I really felt happy and wonderful. Okay, so, well, I do not feel as happy and positive as I was hoping coming into the conversation, but I do feel calmer. I think that's probably a better way to phrase. I am less likely to go doom scrolling, and so there's definitely less of that angst feeling. It's probably still because I'm already starting to think, okay, after we wrap this up, what are the next 3 things I need to get done?
Right. Well, the few things I'm highlighting to myself in my mind is it's okay to disconnect from and not be on the leading pulse of what's happening on the planet. And I think in addition to that, it's okay to increase the impact of happiness and fun at the detriment of being less informed.
Yeah, I think the way you phrased it is key. You don't need to be you don't need to sacrifice your happiness to be informed every day. You can take time to consider other opinions, but don't let those invade your daily routine.
Yeah, right.
You need to manage you need to take in opposing opinions in moderation, just like everything else.
Right. Good stuff, Aaron.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Trish. This was a great conversation.
Thanks, Aaron. I enjoyed it as well. So if you're listening and you have some other ideas of connecting or reconnecting or disconnecting to help increase your happiness over time, we'd love to hear from you. And thanks, everybody, for listening. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye. We appreciate you joining us today for this episode of the Mind Money Spectrum podcast. Be sure to visit mindmoneyspectrum.com to access the entire library of episodes. Remember, it's not black and white, but the wide spectrum of gray area where you get to pursue the freedoms you want in life. Opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical as no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested in directly. Have a nice day.